Scott County, providing safe, healthy, and livable communities.
To item number 5 on our agenda, which is Scott County Delivers. And today we're going to learn more about the status of our specialty courts. So, Jake, I think you're going to kick it off for us today, correct?
I am.
Thank you.
Very much, Madam Chair, Commissioners. This is our annual conversation on specialty courts, something we committed to doing since we launched and established the adult treatment court back in 2016. 2 high-level kind of issues or themes that you're going to hear about. One is the implementation of the first judicial veterans treatment court. A lot of work that went into that over the last year or so. And then the decline in referrals to the adult treatment court. You see that in the packet. I hope we have some conversation about that. And then the other data that's in the packet as well we'll dive into. I'll have the facilitators introduce ourselves, then we'll just keep going around, have the panel introduce yourselves, and then we'll kick things off. I'm Jake Grusing, Transformation Enterprise Services Director with the county.
Brett Davis, Director of Planning and Resource Management.
Jennifer Schultz, Library Director.
Carrie Weber, Economic Assistance Director.
Samantha Hammond, Treatment Court Probation Officer.
Laura Stang, Vets Court Probation Officer.
Margaret Newman, Clinical Social Worker at the Minneapolis VA Medical Center.
Dr. Jennifer Schultz, I'm the psychologist on the treatment court team.
Stephanie Menning, Assistant County Attorney. I sit on both the First Judicial District Veterans Court team and then also the treatment court team.
Aaron Osborne, Coordinator for both Vets Court and Treatment Court with Scott County.
I'm Carrie Lennon. I'm one of the judges here in Scott County. I'm the chief of the district right now, so oversaw the joint Veterans Court that we appreciate the cooperation of our county being part of. And I'm also one of the assigned current drug treatment court judges.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Judge Lennon, for being here today. Thank you, Margaret, for being a guest here with us as well. Jen, would you ask the first question?
Absolutely. So, well, let's just start with one of the themes that Jake pointed out in his introduction. Page 11, I think it is, takes a look at participation in treatment court. And so I don't know, again, I'm not really directing this at anybody, but whoever would like to jump in. If we could just talk a little bit about the kind of the steady decline in referrals and current participation in treatment court. Clearly I think it's pretty clear, like in the COVID, you started out pretty strong with participants and then COVID, but there really hasn't been a rebound, at least it appears from this grant or from this graph since COVID. So I just was wondering if anybody would like to just kick us off, talk a little bit about that, factors contributing to that from your perspectives and kind of where you're hoping to address that or where this is kind of moving.
Sure, and I'll start by addressing that one. I think when we're comparing numbers from last year, I believe we had around 21 total referrals to treatment court in 2023. At this point in time, I believe we've had about 14 referrals. So slightly fewer referrals compared to last year. Granted, we still have another couple of months to go. Overall, we've had, I believe, just the one accepted referral so far in 2024. We have admitted that person. We have one other that has been accepted, but there's been some miscommunication or lack of communication with their defense attorney. And then we also have one pending that actually, for me, is somewhat hopeful with some new practices that we're implementing. And as far as where that's coming from, I think it's hard to nail down exactly one specific place or one specific thing that we can point to. I think as far as what we're doing to address it, we're looking at being more proactive in our outreach. We are talking to referrals or potential referrals the second they come into custody now. So one of the things that we recently implemented was a quick screen at the jail. So when a defendant is taken into custody and our office does a bail screen, one of the things they also do are checking to see if they're eligible for our Vets Court and Treatment Court. Are they a resident of the county or of the First Judicial District for Vets Court, or are they, or do they have a substance use motivated offense, or a co-occurring mental health disorder as well. I think we are doing a great job of doing outreach with our law enforcement partners. Recently, we've spoken with both Savage Police Department as well as Prior Lake Police Department, just doing efforts to educate and continue those relationships. I think a large number of referrals can be coming from law enforcement. They are the ones that make the initial contact. They are also the ones that, when they bring the people into custody, they can be reaching out to me, letting me know, or any of our team know that, this person is someone we've run into multiple times. I think they'd be a great fit. So we've been doing a good job just reestablishing and continuing those relationships. I think some other things we're looking at in the future is expanding potentially our eligibility criteria, and at the very least taking another look at that and seeing, what populations aren't we capturing right now that we very well could be in the future. And that could be anything from, are the offenses that we're capturing, are those all, or could we be getting more of those expanded? Are we actually offering, when we look at also some of the client denials, which is some of the reason why some of these referrals aren't moving through, are we offering a program that meets the needs of every person that wants to come in? So those are some of the things we're looking to address potentially in the future.
So that actually, when you had said the number of referrals, I think you said 21 in 23 and 14 already in 2024. Could you just talk a little bit more about what is it offense related why they're not qualifying? Is it motivation? I mean, is there specific reasons why they're not qualifying for the program?
Sure. So when we have, a large number of the communication that I receive initially is in regards to defendants that are not eligible simply due to residency. A large number of the people coming across my desk, that's kind of the main reason. For some of these others that I'm digging into, and I actually get the chance to meet with them, the reasons that they're for client denials might be that maybe they have potential. So we offer a favorable disposition in return for our program. Maybe they believe that they could receive something even better by going to trial. Then there's also, I believe we've had 2 county attorney denials, and that could be for a variety of reasons. Typically, that's for public safety issues. But yeah, I think the residency piece has been a large part of what we've seen recently.
Thank you.
So I have a question regarding the new arrangement for the Vets Court. Could you talk a little bit about how you're ensuring kind of consistency and continuity between the west side and the east side?
Yeah, sure, of course. So, this is actually a topic that we should address right from the get-go. We wanted to make sure that we're all operating under the same policy and procedure, and we're all interpreting the same way, and we're applying it the same way so that we can ensure equitable and fair process for all of our participants in East and West. So some of the things we're doing to ensure that is myself and my co-coordinator on the East side, Katie Schufelt, we have bi-weekly meetings to ensure that we're both again, interpreting policy correctly, that we're dealing with issues similarly in both sides. She also recently accompanied me to a national conference for coordinators. So we were both able to attend that together, discuss a lot of the topics at length, and make sure, again, that we're kind of understanding similarly kind of what is being presented at that scenario. Her and I continue regular email contact. We have a monthly mentor coordinator meeting where the mentor coordinators that supervise our mentor programs, we all get together to make sure that those are staying on task and kind of addressing things similarly on both ends there. We have quarterly large group meetings between the East and West where we come together, addressing large topic issues. The goal is to do continuing education in those meetings as well moving forward. We have our next one scheduled for November 13th. We do occasional observation of each other's courts. So Katie and I, my So my coordinator and I will, on occasion, go and observe each other's courts. We've done that once already, and we plan to continue to do that as well in the future. Both of our judges, Judge Ehrman and Judge O'Brien, ensure regular contact between them. Margaret Newman, our VGO with the team, actually sits on both teams and is able to be a great source of information and coordination on both teams. And then as far as continuing education for the team, that's something we plan to implement and maintain outside of that, just to make sure that we're all staying up to date on the newest best practices, and then also for any new members that are coming onto our team, ensuring that they have similar or the same trainings coming in.
Margaret, could you, just as a follow-up to that, could you give us a sense of what your role is and what that coordination looks like with the folks you're working with?
Sure. So I'm kind of a liaison between treatment and the judicial system or the court system. So my role is to do a clinical assessment with everyone that comes into the program, just to kind of understand what their treatment needs are. So kind of a full picture, chemical health, mental health, housing, financial needs, and then plug them into those services as needed. So a lot of care coordination with other VA providers, making sure they're getting the right therapy, the right addiction services, following them throughout the course of the program if they relapse or if they struggle with their mental health, making sure that they're getting those services as they need them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question on page 6. This is data that shows recidivism, whether a person graduated from the program or was terminated. And I'm guessing that this is an important data point for this group to follow to see if treatment court is having the outcomes that you're intending. What is this data telling you? Is this data telling you that things are working or not working, or what's been your team's observations on this data point?
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I'm interpreting the data to show us that we're having a positive outcome overall. And one of the things that with this particular graph and this set of data is that you are potentially capturing, I believe, the same people in multiple years. So the potential some overlap occurs there as well. I think, if I remember, the percentages that we're hitting are within or above some of the national averages for recidivism. So we're hitting some of those points. And I think we're always continuing to try to do better as well.
I think there's another point there to be made, though. I had recent contact with a graduate who had done very well from our program, and she said no longer criminal conduct, but she relapsed. And I think we know that recovery is a lifelong process for many people. But the difference is that this time, when she relapsed, she didn't spiral out of control and go back to all the problems. She was able to immediately identify what was happening, seek help, and stop the madness, stop the spiral. And I think we have to remember that what we're doing is we're teaching people to live their lifetime in recovery. And so our goal is that people don't fall all the way back down the mountain, that they get caught, that they may have a stumble, but they're able to continue their lives productively without going completely out of control. I think that's a really important measure because we really have to be realistic about what it is for people to live in recovery.
Thank you, Judge London. That's helpful, I think, for probably everybody in the room to articulate that gap in the story that this data tells. For folks on that side of the table, is there a way in your mind that we could capture that we could quantify that? The story is really important, but is there some data that we could be gathering in addition to, was there another crime committed when somebody relapses? Is there some data we can gather that would help illustrate that story?
We don't necessarily know because it's not our business anymore, right? Like, they don't have to tell us that. It happened to be a person that reached out to me. But yeah, I don't know how we would.
I think I can speak to, I think we've talked a little bit about looking at quality of life types of measurements and trying to see if that's something that we can incorporate. And it would be tricky again to get the people after they've graduated, but even within the program from kind of start to finish, what we see change-wise that way. So there are some measures out there that we have looked at, considered, just trying to figure out implementation-wise how that might work best. So that's certainly on the table too.
Yeah, because I think page 7 maybe shows some of that life factor before and after, maybe what you're getting at, Dr. Schultz. But yeah, interesting. Are most folks, when they're done with treatment, then court off probation and out of the system completely? So it would be hard to continue to track some of those life factors after graduation? Or some of them, do they remain on probation and there's an opportunity to continue? Just like I think that there's another graph that shows kind of recidivism, longer term, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. But is there an opportunity for that life factor post? So again, not knowing exactly if folks are leaving off probation completely when they're done with treatment, they graduate and they're like out of the system, or is there some opportunity to follow them?
I think the answer is it depends, right? So it depends on the level of offense that the person comes in on. For Veterans Court, they could come in anything from a misdemeanor to a felony, and the level of the offense dictates how long they're on supervision for. And then also the offense in question could also dictate whether or not they're looking at a discharge immediately after completion. For some of the higher level offenses, we're looking at potentially continuing them on after completion of the program. For treatment court especially, we have, I believe, up to 180-day review. And typically we're looking at a potential discharge at that point. And then, yeah, we wouldn't be continuing to follow a lot of those data points after the fact. I think, yeah, we've kind of hit the nail on the head, right? It's hard to gather that data without them self-reporting. I've done some looking into, what are some various studies that are out there that maybe indicate different numbers for averages around the nation, and it's hard for them to capture that.
We do learn really amazing things, though, about our graduates when they come back for those reviews. Yesterday, we had a 180-day review, so the participant had graduated from treatment court and was back for his final review, and we were able to have him speak to the fact that he's now a partial business owner. And Dr. Schultz even commented afterwards to see the transformation in so many different areas of his life. He was living in such dysfunction when he entered the program, and to have him shaking everybody's hands on the way out as a business owner was really remarkable. We've had other participants come in during their review hearings, and they've purchased a home, and they now have extended family members living with them. Those are really difficult things to quantify, but we know that the program, I think, is a multiplier, right? It doesn't just impact the life of the person who's graduated. It impacts relationships. It impacts the community because now they're out there proactively contributing to the community by being a business owner, by being a homeowner, by being a taxpayer because they're employed not for cash jobs anymore. And those are difficult things to put down on a graph, but they really speak to the success of the program.
And one of the things that we've actually looked at implementing in the future is a potential alumni program where we could have some of our graduates come in, where we could maintain a relationship with them and potentially continue to be a positive impact on them, but also allow them the opportunity to be a positive impact on us and our current participants as well. So that's something that we're hoping to look at in the future.
So Samantha and Laura, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what your role is in the program and how you work with the participants and maybe some of the challenges you face.
Okay, so as a probation officer, we have different roles, but I meet with them depending on where they're at in the program, once a week to once a month, and that's in the office or in their home. I work with Margaret based off of their treatment needs and just kind of case manage what that looks like. They typically drug test twice a week, so we monitor that weekly, daily, depending on what they need, and just have sometimes daily contact with them, sometimes weekly contact with them. It really depends on what the participant needs in that moment, and then we just kind of work with them at that time. My clients particularly, they just experience a lot of trauma, so they're just kind of more high need. So I work with them a lot more closely, and it's a lot more mental health, or like, I think we have a lot of domestics, so it's a lot more like anger management type of clients that, making sure they're going to those type of programming and just hitting all those appointments that they're supposed to be at.
I think my clients are obviously more substance use based, so me visiting them in treatment centers while they're going to residential or outpatient. And I think some of the challenges that we face are lack of housing and transportation, coming to our meetings and being able to see them regularly.
On page 3 of the narrative, there's a note on potential future activities. Wanting to be more proactive in outreach to community partners and organizations. And I'm wondering 2 things. One, what you're hoping to achieve with that. What are you looking for from those community partners and organizations? And then is there something you would ask of the people in the room today to help with that?
Sure. So as I spoke about a little bit earlier as well, one of those community partners is law enforcement. So we've been going out to speak with them. Again, a lot of it is education. We're looking for some partners, it's a source of referrals. Anyone can send me a referral for anyone if they're involved. So the more people that know about the program, the more opportunity there is for us to receive referrals and for us to help more people. That's a large part of it, but also just to educate the community in general. My hope is to provide various promotional material to different organizations that might be interested in supporting our program, or at the very least sharing this with various members that might have an interest in our program. And I think that by doing so, we provide community members opportunity to, again, be educated in what we do, but also to potentially contribute themselves. And that might be with various family members or friends that maybe their loved ones are involved in our program, or maybe they're just in recovery themselves. I think more education in this matter is always better. As far as, I'm sorry, what was the second part of that question?
Is there something, folks, you have a kind of a captive audience for a little while today anyway. Is there something interested people here would be able to do to support what you're looking for?
I think similar to what I just said, right? I mean, the more people that know, the more people that are aware of what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish, the better. But also just, I think that empathy is a huge part of our program, and understanding and being able to share that and to encourage that is huge. I think a lot of what we see with a lot of our participants is that they don't get a lot of that in their lives. So if you have the opportunity to be one of those people that can be empathetic, that can be understanding, then I certainly encourage you to do so.
And we want to collaborate with the community. I mean, if there are housing, employment, mental health services out there, reach out to any member of the team, and we want to just collect and gather that information for our participants, because it's not uncommon for them to come in and say, I'm at a point now where I'm ready to be looking for a job and I'm really struggling. What resources do you have available? The beauty of the program is that we're offering wraparound services. We're trying to help in every area of their life. And the more that we know what's available in the community that we can extend as a resource to them, the better we do as a program, in the program as a whole.
And I can say too, I know we've had participants jump in on things like the heart giveaway and things like that when they've had their first place, and they've been just amazed they were shocked at how nice everything was. And, and I think for them, they weren't expecting that, and that was just really nice to be able to want to connect them with that, and then have that sense of getting a step up. So I think they've really made use of those things.
Thank you.
Stephanie, you mentioned the wraparound, like trying to wrap around that person. Do you guys have much success in trying to connect folks with more informal supports in the community, so the people that maybe will stay long-term versus programs that are there for short term to kind of meet the immediate needs. But, you know, whether it's family, friends, however that circle goes. Have you had luck connecting people with those folks or engaging those more informal like supports? Because it seems that those are the folks that maybe would help the long-term progress and success of these individuals.
So what you're referring to is what we would call recovery capital. And I think it's one of the greatest indicators of success for our participants. And it's been something that's being pushed extremely so in this last year, especially with a lot of the updated best practices, a lot of the trainings. And it's something that we see is, again, even for our participants, it's the greatest indicator of their success. And so when we're able to actually connect them with those informal supports, with the family, the friends, just give them opportunities to have a normal life, right? I mean, to be able to go to the gym where they might be able to work out every day and have a community there. Maybe they have a board game group where they go and hang out with, AA meetings, NA meetings, sports leagues. Those are the things that we really encourage and where we see a lot of the people in our program thrive is when they have access to those things. Just this last summer, we had a couple of our graduates show up to our treatment court picnic, and they talked about being able to do a kickball league, a sober kickball league, and they invited us. And unfortunately, it was a little last minute for us, but seeing our participants being able to go out and do those sorts of things and seeing them actively pursuing that, that gives us a lot of hope into what we're doing. And I think that's what they're all striving for.
As a follow-up to that, through your work at whatever point with the participants in the program, are you getting information about, or are you aware of whether or not they are like maybe connected with the county human services programs, or if they're receiving public assistance, or like any connections that are there?
Yeah, so we have regular contact with the various departments within the county. We make sure to refer to the various resources available to them. We have a couple team members that are in various departments within the county that specifically do that. We have Peg Case. She kind of collaborates with us, with our treatment court participants, and making some various referrals. She's been a great help, and although she's a team member, she has been enormous help in making sure that we can make some of those connections.
The other part of my caseload is child protection, and a lot of times treatment court participants are parents, and I might be aware of them because of a prior child protection case or just through case management. So it's not uncommon for us to reach out to our partners in Scott County Health and Human Services to say, is there something we can do for this participant? Is there a parent support outreach program that we can hook them up with? Can you make contact with a neighboring county to see if they can reach out to this individual? So we're not afraid to use all of the resources and contacts that we have too to try to help out participants.
Another big part of our program is the mentor program. So everyone's paired with a veteran mentor. So the hope there is that they're developing lifelong friendships with that person. So it doesn't just end when Veterans Court ends, but here's a resource that they have a connection in the community to someone after they graduate the program.
Is that for both courts or just Vets Court?
So Vets Court has the mentor program. We do have a requirement for sponsors for treatment court. And so it's a similar connection, although not the same, but the extra support is always helpful.
There's also peer recovery support specialists that they might get connected with through treatment or sometimes just kind of through our program.
It was mentioned earlier, the importance of coordinating with local law enforcement. On page 14, there's data on treatment court check-ins by local law enforcement. And you note that those checks, the number of checks vary by agency. I'm wondering too if just the nature of the checks or the quality of the checks also vary, and whether you find some departments doing more impactful job in that part of this process than other departments. And not to name them out, but just what are those things that you think are being done well by those departments?
Sure. So I think I mean, personally, I haven't seen any lack of quality from any department. They've all done a great job collaborating with us and communicating with us on their checks. I think a lot of it depends on, where our clients residing, right? If we have a large number of them within Shakopee, obviously we're going to be utilizing Shakopee PD a little more extensively. I think a lot of it is, for our participants, when they talk about their relationships with law enforcement, it comes down to, how much does the officer talk to them, right, when they show up? How in-depth is the officer going? And it can depend on the officer too, right? So it might not be a department having a great relationship. Maybe there's one officer in particular there that has done a really great job doing those checks and has built a great connection with that participant. And I think, again, overall, we've seen a great job from our law enforcement partners trying to do that. Really just a matter of education for a lot of them too, and making sure we continue those relationships.
And Captain Pearson wasn't able to be here today, but she's been awesome.
Yeah, and I actually, I do have a statement from her she wished to share. So if you give me just one moment, I'll read that off for you. So she said, on behalf of law enforcement, please, I'd like to thank the board for their continued support. She's sad she couldn't be here. She wanted me to share that as the law enforcement liaison, she continues to try and strengthen the relationships between law enforcement and clients. Additionally, the ongoing education to her peers about the program to get buy-in from law enforcement. They continue to watch clients make the choice and put in the hard work to change their lives. Without the support of the board and the team, it wouldn't be possible for our clients. And this program impacts a small number of people on paper, but a large number of people overall. And clients participating in the program mend many broken relationships, stop victimizing the community by not committing crimes, and transform into contributing member of society. So she's very thankful of the continued opportunity to work with this program.
Thank you, Aaron. Judge Lennon, we want to be sure we give you the opportunity to speak to the vision for the First Judicial Veterans Treatment Court and the work that went in to get us to where we are today. And of course, any others jump in to supplement your response if needed.
I feel so awkward. He asked the question, and it's you that I really want to talk to. So I'm like, where am I looking here?
You should talk to them.
So
Yep.
just for a moment. As chief of the district, I sit on the Judicial Council, which is our governing board for all our district courts across the state. And that's led by Chief Justice Natalie Hudson and is populated by all the chiefs from the 10 districts as well as other parties related to SCAO. And they come up with priorities, strategic planning priorities for each year. And their focus for the last 2 biennium has been to make treatment courts and veterans courts available to all citizens in the state. So I think I'm right that we have 87 counties in Minnesota. Good, I'm glad I nailed that. We are to the point, we are up to offering some ability to provide treatment court services in over 75 counties at this point. That's unbelievable. I mean, when you think about some of these small counties that are putting together a treatment court with 2 and 3 participants, I mean, what a commitment of a county board to go ahead with that. But what's also part of that is the funding. And so based on those priorities, they are seeking funding from the cannabis legislation, from different ways to help support all our counties because they understand that this is a costly investment for counties. You know, we kind of pat ourselves on the back here because we were ahead of everybody else. You know, we started in 2016 when other places were like, well, maybe if you're Ramsey or Hennepin, but we were there and we started that process. I think it's interesting that we're seeing the ebb and flow that we're seeing now, but I don't think that in any way detracts from the importance of the service that we're providing because our goal is to take people out of our system. And that should always be our goal. I think the joint project of the first district to have an all-encompassing veterans court was an important one because we realized that in some of our small 1 and 2 judge counties that they're never going to have the participants needed. By doing this umbrella joint court, we can encompass all 7 of our counties here in the first district and provide those services throughout the district, even though we only have 2 courts. We were really lucky in that process that we were able to come up with folks that had connections across the district. Bryce Ehrman was our designated Veterans and Treatment Court county attorney for years. He was selected to be on the bench in Dakota County, and now he's working in our Veterans Court across the district. Well, what does that mean? Well, he knows the players. He knows people. He's an approachable person for our team members. And so I feel like we've done a good job of being inclusive and getting people to want to be involved and feel that they can be part of that. I am really proud of what our team has done here. As you know, I was kind of out of the game for a while, and I stepped in to assist another judge who didn't feel she could do this work right now. And it's been kind of fun to be back. But it's also a reminder of that this is parenting a 14-year-old boy every single week. Does anyone have a 14-year-old boy? They're so frustrating. And I actually said to a kid last week, I want to shake you because you just keep nodding and saying you're going to do what I say and then you don't. So you have to understand that this is not like this miracle that we get people in and 6 months later, they're like, all cured. That's not the way it is. But I think the incremental work that we're doing is paying off for our community. And if it's paying off through lower numbers of our filings, lower numbers of nuisance crimes, lower numbers in our child protection area, then we're winning. We're never going to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, but I think we're winning. So we very much appreciate your support. I hope you feel the support of State Court Administration because you do have it. And I just want to congratulate, I think we have a super team here, and we are glad to continue to do the good work for Scott County. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Judge Lennon. Any additional questions from the panel?
The only final thing that I've heard you say a couple times, Aaron, is talking about a lot of the training that your team does on an ongoing basis. And I'm just really curious. I think in the narrative, page 2, it talked a little bit about some recent trainings and some opportunities there. I just didn't know if you could expand on that a little bit and how you think that might have some impact on the programs.
Sure. So here in 2024, the national program that kind of leads best practice recommendations is named All Rise. They came out with a second edition of their best practice manual. And along with that, there comes a whole slew of trainings and recommendations then for programs to attend and to try to implement. What we've seen with our Vets Court is that some of these new recommendations we were able to take in and implement. They do a great job in addressing the needs and just being responsive to our participants. So I believe Samantha Hammond attended a probation agent training earlier this year. Myself and my co-coordinator, Katie Schufeld, attended the coordinator training this year. A lot of it is focusing on those changes to the best practices and how are we going to implement that when we bring it back to our teams. So one of the projects for me, even into this next year, is going to be looking at our manual for treatment courts. And while we have one that reflects these new changes with our Vets Court, how do we then make those changes for our treatment court to make sure we're following those best practices? All Rise also has offered free kind of operational tune-ups to programs, and that has, I believe, great interest to our team, and it's something that we're looking at potentially doing here in this next year as well. A lot of that's going to focus along lines of, okay, how do we implement these new best practices, but also what can we do to improve? Again, what can we do to offer a greater variety of incentives? How can we just be more responsive in general to our participants? And then in May of 2025, they have the All Rise National Convention, and that is for all specialty courts to attend. I believe we were able to secure some funding for that, so the plan is to send at least a few of us to attend that. Where again, the focus will be on these new best practices, how to implement them, and then also just how to do that continuing education with your teams moving forward.
Do they assist at all with helping programs with outcomes and trying to measure some of the things that your group has all been talking about today that's really hard to measure?
So they typically will partner with grants to offer some of that analysis. Otherwise, I believe that's something that we would have to do kind of separately on our own. I believe when Treatment Court was operating under the federal grant they had, a lot of that analysis was a part of that or funded through that grant.
All right, I have 2 questions before we turn it back over to the chair and the commissioners. One, Evan, if we can go to page 16. We have an estimated net cost per participant for our adult treatment court, and setting aside for the purposes of this question, Judge Lennon's articulation of part of the value proposition here is we're paying for more than just that impact on the recidivism rate. We're buying some security potentially down the road, and there's that multiplying factor. But how does this cost per participant rate compare to a traditional probation approach?
Sure, and I might refer to Heidi.
Yeah, prep for so many questions. That's a good one. I don't have like a number. Thank you, Molly Bruner, Community Corrections Director. I don't have an exact number for general probation. Off the top of my head, we do have some research around the state that looks at some averages around that. I appreciate Judge Lennon's comments here. I mean, it is, per participant can be rather spendy. And the types of clients that come in here are very high risk. They have, again, very serious, chemical, mental health sorts of oriented issues. And so keeping people out of prison, keeping people out of our jails, stabilizing all the things you've heard today, it is very hard to put a cost on the things that you're not paying for on the other side of things, right? So although on paper it does appear that way, it definitely, with the success rates we're seeing and not paying for deep end services, which we can quantify that, we just can't quantify the what didn't happen sorts of things. It can look, or can be the cost benefit analysis does tend to work out then in these programs, of course, otherwise we wouldn't be doing them, so.
Yeah. Thank you. Second part of that, just kind of a comparison question, is we have the data on slide 6 around recidivism for those who participate in treatment court. Do we have the recidivism rate for people who do not participate in the treatment court, just to have that comparison?
Keep going up in the 3-year to 3-year felony, right?
So does that, Heidi, does that exclude treatment court participants, or is the treatment court participation number so small that doesn't influence that?
That would include felony to felony. So it's the Department of Corrections. Sorry, the Department of Corrections is actually the one who provides this data for us right now. So it would still include those because they're going up to our statewide supervision system. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a staff question before it goes to the board. I went back to the 2016 RBA in getting ready for this meeting just to read it, and remembering some of the work sessions. In fact, 3 of the board members weren't even here when they approved the original treatment court. But it was, focusing on the high-risk, high-need offenders, which Molly and you just talked about, reducing recidivism, future crime by participants, preventing overdose deaths, reducing collateral damage against families and community, which I think the judge hit really hard on, reducing costs to the criminal justice system and the community, and then enabling addicts in the criminal justice system to become productive, responsible members of their families and community, and a commitment to report on this. It was biannually for the first 4 years and then annually after that, which we've continued to do. But one of the things I like to ask on programs like this is each one of you, if you'd short response. I'm going to start with Carrie Lorenz back there, who's been hiding. If there was one thing you could do in 2025, what's the one thing you would ask for in our treatment courts?
Okay. Well, I think, I mean, part of it is just addressing some of those barriers that our clients continue to face. And so I don't know how, I guess if I had, you know, ultimate access to everything, it would just be ensuring that they have affordable housing. So again, they go through our program, they do their treatment program, they gain sobriety, they have supports, they address their mental health, issues. But a lot of clients really struggle with being able to afford appropriate housing. So that would be one thing for sure. And obviously we're utilizing our transformation houses for some of those clients, but we do have clients that aren't necessarily homeless, but don't really have stable housing situations.
Samantha.
I would agree with Katie. Also, I think a big struggle for our clients is transportation. Just being able to come to client probation meetings, being able to, if they find employment, get into employment, come into court.
So are we using our program that transportation put together for Lyft or Uber or whatever it is to be able to use those rides?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not yet.
All right.
It's definitely on the horizon for sure.
That's a work due. Okay, we got it. Laura?
I'd say what they said. Housing is my biggest issue with my clients, I think. So if I could give them anything right now, would be like just an easier way to find them housing without jumping through a lot of hoops and making it so stressful. Like I said, my clients have a lot of trauma, so when they're so stressed, it just adds to their plate and they don't know how to handle that. So when they're stressed, it just makes things so much more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't enough Section 8 units in Scott County, so we have a veteran who has a Section 8 voucher and isn't able to locate an apartment because there aren't any Section 8 units in the community. So that is definitely a theme that's happening here. I would say increasing peer support, that's one of the goals of the VA. We just hired 2 peer support specialists, so increasing that connection with veteran peer support specialists would be another goal for 2025.
Well, I'll speak to mental health then. I would say, I think we do a good job with mental health and being able to, get our assessments done and get people connected where we can. I know we've had at least one participant, I would imagine more, who have struggled with when you're just trying to make sure people are staying up to date with getting insurance and getting the things that they need that way. We had someone who she just struggled with that and didn't have some options. So she was able to find some therapy services that were free. So just trying to, again, make sure that we're getting people connected that way. And I would say too, I like our idea that we've talked about with the alumni group, because I think they could serve so many different functions that would be beneficial for them. But then we've also talked about, could they be somewhat, kind of providing some orientation or things like that to our new participants, kind of guiding them a little bit along the way. I think that would be good.
From the county attorney's office, I'd like to see us cast a wider net, look at policies and ways that we can capture more participants that would be appropriate for the program, whether or not that's going through policy and procedure manual, just looking at ways to get more people in to participate.
These are all things that, of course, are important to our program. One thing that for me is something that I've thought about recently is the possibility of pre-treatment beds for our participants and just allowing them an opportunity to have a sober place to stay while they're waiting to actually get into a residential or some other treatment program.
That isn't jail.
Yes, and that's the key, right? Is that, yeah, when we don't have that as an option, sometimes jail is the one we fall upon. And so to be able to provide that option that lets them stay in the community while they're waiting for that treatment bed would be something I'd like to pursue in the future.
And I really think it has to do with social. I think that our addicts struggle because they don't have a sober network of friends and they don't have sober supports in the community. And if you think about so much of our social lives, and I'll just speak for myself, are around drinking. And when we tell people, we don't want you to drink anymore, where do you go? What do you do? You can't play on a softball team. You can't play, all those things have drinking involved in them. And so to try to set up some areas where there is socially acceptable things to do that don't involve drugs and alcohol. And to have, you know, whatever it is, bowling leagues or things that in the community where we say, this is an event that doesn't involve drinking. And we can invite people to that, and we can have people find some sense of community. So they're not always like on the edge. You know what I mean? Like they just need to have a feeling more of community that they fit in, and that we have, that they're welcome, I guess, in community things.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Leslie. That provided a lot. Thank you so much to the panel. I know we'll have some questions and comments, but this is always good, and I learn so much each year. And I think I sit here and think about the data. You know, I come in here after looking at it and reviewing it with these questions and like, oh, why is this? Why is this? And then you really help provide that context and nuance that we can't just look at the numbers and be. So thank you for that. Colleagues, Commissioner Ulrich.
Well, I do have a data question. I'm having a hard time figuring out page 11 with page 16. If I added up the active from, say, the bottom, on page 11, the bottom active, you add those up, that's 8, that's 15, that's 16 active, according to the people that are active by those years that they were in the program. I'm wondering how that adds up to 42 participants. How do we get to 42? How many really are participating right now? I don't get where the numbers, how those two data points, when those pages add up.
So right now we have 16 current participants in treatment court, and I believe we have 17 in vets court.
Okay, all right. Okay, so that's that on page 42. Those are combined both courts. Is that correct? Okay, then that helps me understand that. Then I have a comment on just the way the data on denials is aggregated. I think it would be, rather than have 2016 to 2024, I'd rather see it by year than aggregated, because you don't get really a sense of when things are occurring, you know. Maybe most of the
They don't finish in a calendar year, though. There's all that overlap.
Yeah, well.
But we deny in a calendar year.
But 8 years of, okay, maybe it was 7 years ago that all the denials were occurred. I don't, you know.
Oh, that's a good point.
So I don't know. Yeah, I'd like by year with these reasons, and I would take out not a resident, because they shouldn't even be, that should be the first question. You can't apply, you're not a resident. So I mean, it shouldn't even be in here, I don't think, not a resident. Does that make sense?
So it's more a qualifying criteria than a
Yeah,
denial.
if you're not a resident, you can't apply.
For
Is that true?
So yeah, that is true, right? The only factor there is that for some of the data tracking purposes, we have to come up with what is a referral question, right? And so sometimes we get that referral and the referent isn't even aware of where the person is staying. Maybe it's coming from a defense attorney and the person is saying they're homeless. And so after some more digging, and actually I've invested some time then into the referral, come to find out that the majority of their time has actually been spent in Hennepin County. So because of the invested work into that person, we're still going to list them as a referral.
I get it. You have to do some digging to qualify whether they're a resident or not.
Yes.
It's not just a yes or no. Correct. Okay, I get it.
Although sometimes I will tell you that a fellow prosecutor will just send me a message quick and say, is this person eligible? And the first thing I look at is residency, and then I'll say to them, are they a current resident, or would they otherwise meet our homeless criteria? And if they say no, that doesn't even make it to Aaron. So
okay.
some of that information, I think, is already sort of weeded out and doesn't make it to referral status.
Okay, well, thank you.
I'll just comment on one of your comments. I think the denials and looking at years is important, because over the past few years, many years, we've talked a lot about, oh, how can, we look at Ron, how can you deny less people? What can we change? So it's hard to see the changes if it's just aggregate data like that. We can't see that we're making progress on not denying so many people. So thank you for that.
One more on this. Not high risk, high need. Do you sometimes see people that were in that category that all of a sudden they became high risk, high need? In other words, I'm thinking we want to be proactive and prevent somebody from becoming high risk, high need. I mean, say more about this category.
Of course. So as part of the referral process, I do a screening interview with that potential participant, and I do two different assessments. One is a quick screen, and that's the one that we generally base our yes or no off of for high risk, high need. And then we do a more in-depth interview to just get more clarification and to do more case planning needs about. For those that are not high risk, high need, involving them in this process, what research has shown is that taking someone that's lower risk or lower need can potentially increase their risk by exposing them to that population.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. One more, just so you get a little better understanding. Client declined. Is the cure sometimes worse than the punishment? Huh?
Yeah.
So maybe you want to speak on that?
Well, sometimes, and remember too, I mean, we have a 15218, which is a statutory disposition for low-level controlled substance offenders. They're entitled to a stay of adjudication or a diversion. Sometimes a referral might come in and we look at it, and I mean, we had this yesterday. We have an observer who is high risk, high need, meets eligibility requirements, but he might be entitled to the same disposition statutorily. And so it's a less intensive period of probation. And then it's their choice. It's a voluntary program. What do you want to sign up to do?
Okay.
So we do see that sometimes.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Mayor?
This is always one of those times when you just really remember how messy this is. Life on life, life-changing, trying to transform people's lives. Messy, I think you used the word frustrating. And yet, it's one of those deals where I wasn't here when it first got approved, but I think we were all mostly here when all the workshops were kind of kicking off, and Judge Wilton was I think one of the main back in the day anyway. And so I went to some of those graduations, and to see, I mean, this takes life, someone pouring life into someone else. And Jamie, I forget her title, but I thought it was Captain, yeah. You know, when she's here, you see it, you have the same passion of pouring your life into someone else's life to see change and transformation. And sometimes as bad as you want it for somebody until they want it for themselves. And that leads to some frustration, but hopefully all the touch points and the passion and the hope, trying to instill hope into people, we see change. And more importantly, they see change. That's what we're after. And so, you know, with Leslie's, I was gonna say $1 million question, I think housing might be a couple $1 billion question. We'll talk to the state about that. But are there gaps? And so, you know, we're big on trying to find partners. You know, we're going to go see a group tomorrow that, you know, what they're already doing, can we bring that back here? Not necessarily for this, but maybe. But are there current partners anywhere in the country, the state, the world, I don't know, that you guys have come across that are filling a void that maybe we can't do, that would be helpful to come alongside, and because you only have so many hours in a day. There's a lot of you here, there's a lot of horsepower, but you can't be everywhere, and that's not our call either. But are there partners, are there third parties, nonprofits, I don't know, that can help come alongside that are already doing something like this to help be that life on life when Jamie's not on duty or you're not in the office, to really make those numbers. You know, we can't make the numbers, but we can be that hope, instilling that hope in people so they see change and want that change. So I don't know if there's an answer to that necessarily, if there's other groups. We were first-ish, but, you know, others are out there doing it. So is there someone else that like, wow, what are you guys doing? I don't mind stealing stuff. Not that I don't want to be in your court. I definitely don't want to be in your courtroom after my daughter, who interned here for free, just in case that's a Judge Lennon, she does not beat around the bush. She is fair and firm. So you're making an impact on a senior in criminal justice and psychology. So I wanted you to know that. You made an impact on her. So are there things that we can do? Are there, how to fill in these gaps? Because we can't be all things to all people. We want to, I want to, we can't. But together, are there groups? And if there's not an answer, like, I know that's Jake, Mr. Transformation, you can put that, you got a little list of things to do, you can put that on the list.
So, I think it's a hard question, right? Because my guess is that there's a lot of organizations out there that they can help that we're just not aware of, right? Yeah. But what I've seen with a lot of coordinators, and when we networked at that conference that we went to earlier in the year, a lot of the coordinators, what they found the greatest success in is utilizing their local partners, utilizing the people in their community, and educating them so they understand what the program is, and then getting them to provide those resources locally, provide those opportunities locally. For one gap that might be worth mentioning is employment, right? So obviously we have lots of employers in the county, but not necessarily everyone's willing to hire someone with a felony on their record. And so the education piece can be really important then by talking to different employers and telling them what we're about, what we're trying to do. And I've seen it work in other counties and other states and throughout the U.S. that by doing so, you can get some really strong partners in the community that are willing to offer opportunities to people they wouldn't have necessarily before. So ultimately, I think what we're going to see the greatest success is utilizing the people that are here and the community members and partners that are right on our doorstep.
It feels like we do have a lot of pieces, even right underneath this roof, or certainly in this community. And I know it takes time. So it is this weird, okay, look at the report and that seemed a little, and I know it doesn't always capture that. I get that. And that's why we always have these conversations. Like, exactly. I don't know if there's a day that goes by we don't feel the squeeze of if we had all kinds of just infinite money. We don't. And yet we want to be a place where people really see and feel and can taste that hope and transformation that's available if they want it. And so how do we best do that without, raising taxes through the roof? Because it's not always about money, but money helps. So I don't, I know we did some job fair in the jail, which I know is a little different, but, we have that group. So hopefully we're working with the folks downstairs to do so that you're not all doing it yourselves. All right.
And the Workforce Center has been giving some free, we had somebody who just finished the boiler class.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Glad to hear that.
Oh, yay. Still have a boiler.
Oh, yeah. It's
Big facilities, big facilities.
Big
too.
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Good to see you.
All right, maybe one last thing.
Your questions a little shorter.
Yeah, sorry. It's not even questions. It's not even questions. It's just. I'm the guy that's got to leave early. Jamie, she's kind of the high water mark, right? So again, going back to the question that was asked, other jurisdictions maybe, but the numbers are different, so I guess it drives that. But how do we best, I'm sure she's out being an ambassador to others of the payback, ROI, I hate to.
I had that same question, and I like how Aaron,
she will ask, I'm turning to red.
When you read the captain's statement and she even mentioned something about educating other law enforcement officers, and I am just like, yes, and how can we help and make that happen? Because I think especially in some of our smaller communities, and I'm sure still in Shakopee and Savage and Prairie Lake too, a lot of turnover in that area, and she really has instituted some best practices with those visits. And maybe I know or have examples of other law enforcement officers around the county, just because they haven't heard about it, don't look at those visits the same way, or don't, utilize them in the same way. And so anything, I think that's what you're saying, and I'm saying, is anything we can do to help get her opportunities to talk about her experiences and the outcomes of those visits with the rest of our departments, and on a regular basis, because there's going to be turnover. And maybe Jordan only has one participant in the court right now, but in 2 years they're going to have 3, so it's something that I think needs to be almost institutionalized in the program, that it happens regularly, and we can't count on her for everything, but who else can do it? Is that what you're? Okay, thanks.
So nice.
I'll come back if you have
So
more.
nice, yes.
Mr. Brennan.
Really, the only thing I wanted to bring up was affordable housing and then hiring. So I think that's something that's been addressed. So I don't have anything else. Thank you.
I would just say with that, on that same, the hiring, and really good to hear about somebody with the boiler operator, but this is an example where sometimes I'm sure, Carrie, you don't even know how much your workforce and training folks have helped these folks. And I don't know if there's a good way to be able to quantify that, because that's, I don't know exactly why, but that's important to me, or it seems important. We want to know that that's working. And if there's some mechanism that is efficient and not time consuming, to know that, because it helps with resources and figuring out when we want to increase things. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, on that page 5, there was the target of 85%, and it was achieved, looked like this year. I wonder, how do you move that to 100%, or why not?
Molly, that's you.
Kind of like towards 0 deaths, kind of like towards 0 repeat.
Right. I think that is always our goal, right? One of my taglines is like, work me out of a job. That would be a wonderful place to live, right? I think there's also what are the realistic expectations living in the world that we do, I guess, that 100% is aspirational. Is it achievable? And if we're looking across the state and trying to compare those numbers, like what really is a high standard? And then that's where this 85% was set. Not to say that we're not always trying to aspire, to clearly to be 100%.
What's the range on those numbers across the state? I mean, is there like the high and the low? Is there 100 and is there a 20%, or you know what I'm saying?
It ranges usually between 70 and 80.
I see. Okay.
Somewhere in that 70 to 85. Yeah.
Good.
Yes, Mr. Hosvar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one thing I want to also, maybe Stephanie can address this, but one of my focuses for this whole thing is that we have to remember that there's victims out there. These people, these individuals in treatment court got there because they committed a crime. So you don't get to them unless they've committed a crime. A lot of those crimes are not victimless. So Stephanie, one of my priorities has always been, we have to keep track of our victims. We have to treat them appropriately. So how is that addressed?
Yeah, so every case that comes through on a referral, I coordinate with our victim witness coordinators, and I will have a conversation, either myself directly or through the victim witness coordinator, about treatment court, what it is, what it does, what the purpose is, what their involvement can be if they want to. They can still submit victim impact statements. We still make sure that restitution is a part of the disposition or the sentence. I can tell you that I've had a number of these conversations over the 3 years that I've been a treatment court team member. I have often had people say, I'm not sure at the start of the conversation whether or not they would support the defendant's entry into the program. I don't think I've ever had anyone by the end of the conversation say, what a terrible idea, don't do that. So once they learn more about it, once they learn what the purpose is, all of the different resources that are being utilized to help better the life of the participant, which usually then impacts them, I almost universally have onboarding from the victims. But they always have the opportunity to be heard. So make a statement, and again, like I said, restitution.
Thank you for that question, important part of this. Thank you very much. A couple just comments that I think, and I would invite my colleagues to disagree with me if this isn't true. And one, Stephanie, just thank you for talking about, and I'm sure the whole team will be doing this, looking at the policies and the procedures, because I think our goal would be, let's have both of these courts be full. I mean, that's the most efficient use of the dollars, the best steward of the dollars. So anything that can be done, and again, staying true to the program and what's needed, but anything that can be done to get towards that place, I think would be really important. I talked about Jamie, and this is maybe a little bit for next year, because I don't know that we have time, but if people want to share things with me offline, I'd love to hear it. We invest a lot of time and resources and you guys, tears and sweat and all that into this program, and these smaller, almost it's an experiment or an idea to be able to do that wraparound services. I'd love to know what we've learned or what we've been able to take from all of your work to our big, probation, community supervision system, to our mental health center, even in the work we do with vets across the system. What have we learned and been able to do? Because this is different. Your caseloads are different. I mean, these folks are getting much more intensive supervision. If we could do that with every single person in these programs, outcomes would be different. Well, I'd love to hear about and have us think about what little tidbits, what little things we learned from these intensive experiences that we can blast out to the whole populations, because that really makes this investment worth it. And so again, and I think Molly has something to say about it, but even next year or next time we report, I'd love to hear more about that, because I think that's a goal, a very much aspirational goal.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and all the commissioners for your questions and feedback. That is a goal for 2025, to have a formal evaluation of treatment court, and then we will be doing the same thing as we continue to work with the First Judicial District for the Veterans Court. That will really address a lot of the things you're talking about. It's going to look at recidivism in different ways. One thing that wasn't necessarily mentioned, but even a harm reduction model, meaning if somebody commits a new offense, what are we talking about with that new offense? Is it a misdemeanor theft, or is it in a similar vein in terms of what they were doing with their high-risk drug use, let's say? So lots of different variables, many of the things that you've talked about, including assessments or surveys of clients, and again, our community partners and different things like that. So hopefully next year you'll have a much more robust, like formal evaluation is what I'm getting at, related to our participants and things like that. And also I just wanted to add, in terms of the law enforcement comments, Captain Pearson is also now on our Community Corrections Advisory Board, and I've had a conversation as of last week with Sheriff Hennon about the sheriffs and how, again, we can start to maybe do more outreach and get more sheriffs involved in treatment and vets court, especially here in Scott County. So just wanted to kind of share that as well.
Thank you. And then Judge Lennon's comment about sober activities for folks in the community, huge. I just think everybody in this room and everybody listening to be able to think about how all of us can try and promote that type of thing, whether it be in faith communities, nonprofits, others in the community, because that probably is a gap, not just for these 50 people. This is a gap for everyone. So thank you for that. I know we have just a special person just entered the room. I saw him loitering out there, and really glad to see Commissioner Mike Beard back in Scott County. You missed Interested Citizens.
I did. I'm sorry to do that, but I am an interested citizen.
Wonderful. All right. Yeah. The guard downstairs missed you. Did you have more? I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to get it right.
Yes, no, we're good.
All right.
I'm staying red because you got me covered.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Great presentation, and excited to continue this work.